Hey, all right. Hey, good morning, everyone. Here we are today for another edition of our SubTo program, and we are welcoming you today. For this, we're excited about talking about Sub2s and wraps. They're amazing ways of investing and strategies. My name is Alex Sanders, and I run the Alex Sanders Realty Investment Group here in San Antonio, Texas, and our entire focus is to help investors, wholesalers, agents, sellers, buyers, how to buy and sell properties. Our whole focus is acquisitions, and one of our main strategies is buying properties subject to. Good morning, Alan. Give me some of your thoughts of your day thus far.
Uh, you know, uh, Everything is going real well. Today, I've been contacted by two different sellers asking me, "Hey, how can I sell my house if we can't pay off that mortgage?"
Huh.
So the wraps are still going fast. I think they're going to keep going faster and faster.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're kind of seeing the market is shifting, right? I think you and I have seen it because even real estate agents who have properties on the market are saying, "Hey, what's going on? How do I sell my property? How do I sell my seller's properties? Because it's been listed for 90 days." And either two things are happening. Either they're getting no offers, or number two, they're getting very low ball offers. And they don't want to sell a property that may be 2 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old that has no equity. They're not going to sell it to a wholesaler because they can't make money out of it.
Yeah, yeah. I have one couple I'm helping. They're distressed, and it's funny. They got a contract in. It was last night, probably at 7 p.m. or so, and so I got to the contract and I was looking at it, and I kind of looked up who was the buyer. They had already posted it on Facebook as a wholesaler for sale, and they're trying to close in 7 days. So I was like, I'm not certain that's going to work.
That's definitely not going to work. It's they're trying to use a type of strategy on the wrong asset
Yeah,
class,
yeah,
and I think you and I are seeing this quite a bit where wholesalers are trying to transfer over to the sub two type transactions. And if they're thinking that way, well, then it's not going to work because it's not the same process from beginning to end.
yeah, yeah. No, you're right. And I'm not advising them necessarily which one to take. I'm just advising on which ones will work and not work.
Sure, sure. Because at the end of the day, it's really an investing tool. And the way I kind of differentiate both of them, at least in my mind, Ellen, is wholesaling is a sales product. That's all it is. It's just as marketing and sales. Whereas sub two is an investment product. So people are buying it for an investment person. Now, can they wholesale a sub two? Yeah, they can. But the end buyer makes it harder for an end buyer to buy it because it becomes too expensive by the time the end buyer gets it.
That's exactly what I just got off the phone with someone said. I think there's too much wholesale fees embedded in this. We can't go forward.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I get those. I get at least 4 or 5 a day of people telling me I have the perfect subject to for you. Oh really? Because 20,000 goes to the seller, 15,000 goes to the agent, 15,000 goes to the wholesaler. I mean, there's no skin, and I mean, there's just no way to make money out of that deal.
Yeah, yeah. The phone call just had the investor said, let's do this. 9 months subject to defer real estate commissions until the resale, and that way they get more. Instead of 800, they're getting 1.2, and then equity partner with the seller to decrease their dollars up front, but they get more at the back end. So creativity is fun.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and those deals work because if a seller is willing to hold for his money because they're willing to take a higher price and seller finance the entry fee at some point or take a second note on the back end, then everybody wins.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is the kind of stuff that I want every single investor to have. Just tools
Yeah,
in their toolkit. All right, well now this straight sub two is not going to work. What can we do? Equity partner.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And my first deals when I first started in sub two 10 years ago, one of my very first deals, I can't believe how I even structured it, but it worked out where I literally bought the entire house for $750. That was my entire entry fee. That was it. And it's because it cost me $750 to close on the property.
Yeah,
That's it. And I gave the seller $100 just so that I would have consideration, right? And
yeah,
he was willing to accept that. And then he had about $80,000 worth of equity that he did not want right now. He just wanted to get rid of the house. It was not a foreclosure. He was up to date with all of his payments. There was no liens. 1 acre property, 5 bedrooms, 4 bath, an elevator in the house, and a secret room to that elevator upstairs. It is an incredible property. And that deal alone taught me how to structure
Yeah.
through trial and error. But those deals are even available today, and the interest rate on it was only like 3%. So it's a perfect sub-2 opportunity. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. Creativity is good.
absolutely. And sub-2 is all about buying things creatively, right? Getting assets creatively. And if you don't know how to buy it creatively, that's when they connect with you, Alan, because you've got a program and you talk about this in your program. You want to share a little bit about that? We'll talk about it a lot more at the end, but share a little bit about that, because I know a lot of people want to learn how to do this legally and correct here in the state of Texas.
Yeah. You've got different levels, I guess, of utilizing wraps, sub-twos, what have you. And so acquiring a property by taking over someone's mortgage and then immediately seller finance wrap, that's kind of the standard. But you got to remember, all right, seller has too much equity in this thing. I don't want to come and get a big old giant mortgage and take this over hard money loan or what have you. And so we start talking about, all right, well, I'm going to buy it via mortgage wrap. So if they owe 300, but it's worth 700,000, then I bring 50,000 down and have a $650,000 note. So it's a wrap acquisition instead of a sub-2 acquisition. And sometimes people aren't looking at that. And then the equity partnering with the sub-2 is probably the most powerful tool we have. You avoid all your hard money loan, hard money carrying cost and such. And then you just start drilling down from there, kind of like you were saying with your $750 purchase. And the exit strategies, what some folks don't remember, you don't have to go sell it conventional. You can keep it as a rental. You can keep it as a short-term rental. You can keep it as, any exit strategy that works, if you had paid cash for that, will work after your sub-2 acquisition. And sometimes people don't take that into consideration. So, this is just one of the numerous tools. But then whenever you start learning the tool, you learn different ways to utilize that one tool. So education is big.
Absolutely. And, what I have found is that even though YouTube has a lot of training in all types of real estate, it gives generalizations, but it doesn't tell you the actual step by step. And sub-2 is not like a wholesale deal where you just say, such and such and or assigns, you get somebody to sign it and you're out of that transaction. Like there's no more work for you to do. But with sub-2, you're creating a marriage between you and a seller, you and a bank, and then you and a buyer, and you and an escrow servicing company. So there's a lot of players involved. They stay together for a long time. And trying to play that game, it's got to be done right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of, let's talk about us. Let's talk about our attorneys who are closing these things. You can find out what a wrap is, and then you can utilize State Bar of Texas wrap forms and then close a transaction. Yeah. But you haven't taken care of all of the nuances, like you were saying. Do we want third-party loan servicing agreement? Did we take care of escrows? Did we take care of insurance? Did we take care of syncing up the maturity dates? There's a lot of things that you got to consider, and that shouldn't necessarily be on the investor side. That should be on the attorney side, drafting up the documents and managing the mortgage wrap transaction.
So Alan, you and I were talking about a couple things, and you were mentioning that today we are in what you would call, I guess we could all call, is that we're in a perfect storm. Yeah. And that perfect storm is ready for sub-2s, ready for wraps. There's plenty. You could probably teach about this all day. In fact, you are teaching about it all day on Saturday. So let's do a little plug about that.
Yeah, if you want to make a trip to Austin on Saturday, May 20, we've got the Wrap University Live program. We've got online version and live version. I like the live version. We get to have some interaction with folks and learn. Yeah. But that's here in Austin, 11:30 on this Saturday. So it'll be fun. And I just now realized in my Mortgage Wrap University course, I didn't take care of sometimes in a subject to acquisition. There may be some niceties in regard to the escrow account that you got to take care of, and that came up recently in a file we have. So I'm going to have to add a new slide or two, and it's always growing. Always growing. We're, we got our Facebook mortgage wrap community so that people can start putting these things out there and we start all learning together, including me.
Yeah. And so if they go to your Facebook page, Alan, they'll be able to sign up for the May 20th Wrap University to attend.
Yeah. If you Google my last name, you're going to find our website, and you can email us there, or if you put Ceshker in Facebook, you're going to find me there and find all the information. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, let's go back to our question. It's a perfect storm for SubTos and Wrap. What makes it a perfect storm? Why are we in this perfect storm right now?
So it's similar to back in 07, 08. That was a good time for mortgage wraps. But what's different now is the interest rates of the mortgages going up. Folks don't want to buy mortgages right now. They don't like that double the interest rate they were paying just a year ago. Yeah. And so that with the lender qualifications going up and those mortgage forbearances that are ending, those are some of the things that are different than what was going on back in 07, 08. And then lowering market values. So foreclosures increase, and probably the number one best way to acquire a SubTo foreclosure situation. So therefore, everyone's looking for alternative lending, and that's what a mortgage wrap is. It's just alternative lending, or in a SubTo acquisition, to other people's money. So it's kind of a perfect storm. I think it's going to keep going up and up and up. And I ain't gonna say I know what the market's going to do, but if it goes further south on us, then it's going to even increase these SubTos and wraps.
Yeah, yeah. And we're actually seeing that because I was actually talking to a couple of buyers on some of the seller finance deals. That I have 10 seller finance deals I am selling at the moment. And some of these buyers are coming to me and saying, hey, your interest rates are almost the same as the banks. Yet I don't have to go through all the problems of the banks today that, they're giving you literally a colonoscopy to give you a loan. And so it's easier to just go get a seller finance deal, buy the property, hold it for 2 years, build equity, then refinance it.
Yeah. Yeah. Some folks are out there gobbling up every 3.25 interest SubTo they can get, even if they can buy it at above fair market value if they want to, because the value is that monthly payment. Mm-hmm. They go then offer someone, hey, I'll give you a really good interest rate. Right now you can get a 6.5 on the market. I'll give you a 5.75. And now you're creating cash flow where it didn't exist.
Absolutely. And really the beauty of a SubTo is that you're creating that cash flow, right? You're not renting, you're just collecting interest payments because you actually sold that property.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not fixing roofs and toilets.
Exactly. It's something we definitely don't want to do. I'm going to ask a question here. We have it in different channels, so I know different questions are coming at different points, but I'm going to go ahead and ask the question. Now I'm just going to retype it. And somebody asked, Lana asked, is a SubTo and a wrap like seller, let me see, let me type it well here, like seller financing, and I'll put it on the screen so we can see it here. But they're asking, is a SubTo and a wrap like seller financing? And I know many times people have difficulty trying to understand what it actually is and what plays what role in what category and at what point. So what are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, I like that question, even though it's the first question so far. It's my favorite, and the reason it's my favorite is because I've got a slide that defines early in my presentation, either online or live. I think it's the second, third, fourth slide, what have you, and it says a SubTo or a mortgage wrap, either one, is simply the seller financing of a property, and that's where you stop. Don't think about that mortgage being there. If you conceptualize these things as just seller financing, it's gonna allow you to demystify and conceptualize these things better. Now, once you understand, okay, I'm acquiring that property from the seller. They're in distress situation. I'm acquiring SubTo. They are seller financing me their property. They are now a lender. I owe them that money that is owed to the mortgage. Now I'm going to make that payment to a third party loan servicing company or the lender directly,
Right.
but that seller is a lender to me. And then whenever I go sell it to the end buyer, it's just seller financing.
Yep.
Ignore the fact that there's an existing mortgage. I'm seller financing. I'm now a bank.
Yep.
So that seller to me is a bank, and me to the end buyer is a bank. I'm
Yep.
a bank. So if you can, I always tell people to when you start first trying to figure these things out and get your head wrapped around it, so to speak, no pun intended. You're using the TREC 1-4 contract and you're drafting it up like it's a seller finance transaction.
Yep.
So the answer is to the question asker is yeah, absolutely 100%. It is like seller finance because it is seller financing.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, if the seller still has an underlying loan, that's really the first bank.
Yeah.
And then if the seller is maybe helping you with creative financing and he's taking a note on his part of the down payment or portion of his equity, that's the second bank, which is the seller, right? And then
Yep.
you're selling that property and you actually becoming the third bank.
Yep. And then if we had a first time home buyer program or a HUD lien or something,
Yep.
then it's a fourth lien.
It's a fourth lien, right? So and it can get complicated. That's why I'm saying if a wholesaler or an investor doesn't fully understand the SubTo transaction, how do you actually acquire the property? What are the right ways to do it, right? And filling out all the forms we talked about last week. And then you're going to wrap that property. There's a lot of places where a mistake can take place.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of attorneys I'm friends with, and they're in this market, in this industry, what have you. They just don't eat and sleep it like I do. And so they'll give me a holler. Hey, we're trying to close this, or we're trying to end up unwinding this wrap. They're paying it off, but it's a wrap of a wrap of a wrap.
Yeah.
How do we do this? And I help those folks out. But that's my way of saying you've got to land in the right place. There's an old commercial out there that said, if you're not using our product, make sure you're using our competitor's product. And I say the same thing. If you're not using an attorney that knows this stuff, if you're not using me, make sure you're using an attorney that knows this stuff. And you can't ask them, hey, can you close a wrap? Because the answer is yes.
Yeah.
You got to vet them.
It's going to be yes all the time.
Yep.
That's right. Absolutely. It's like going to a mechanic, say, hey, can you fix it? Yep, I can fix it. Right. There's always, I'm not going to tell you how much it's going to cost, but yeah, I can absolutely fix it. Right.
And then they learn on the fly.
That's right. They'll learn on the fly. They watch a couple of YouTubes and they fixed it. But but the thing about this is I would rather pay $1,500 to an attorney to do it right than for me to get taken to a lawsuit.
Yeah. I have a file right now, 2014 wrap closing. And they came and said, hey, end buyer is squawking, and they've got an attorney, and we've got a demand letter. They're saying, all kinds of fraud, And I was actually kind of scared because my 6, 7, 8, my 9-year-old documents might not be as smart as my 1-year-old documents. And so I pulled everything out. And I was like, okay, good. Alan did it right. So I was able to send a letter out there to the attorney, and he kind of bugged out.
That's funny. But that's an important point, though, because these documents need to be updated because the laws keep changing.
Oh, yeah. Just recently, the biggest change in mortgage wrap legislation occurred 2 years ago, went into effect January of 21. And, I think we talked about it last time too, but I like the legislation because it allows me, when someone says, hey, this is fraud, or this is a Deceptive Trade Practices Act, this is this, that, or the other, I get to say, how is the legislature making laws on how to do this if this is illegal? So it's good. I like the laws.
Well, absolutely. And at the end of the day, there's nothing illegal going on. We're literally following Texas Property Code, Texas State Code, Texas Occupancy Code. I mean, it's all there, and it's all about knowing how to do it appropriately, right?
Yeah.
Maida's asking a question real quick here, Alan. What's a wrap, and when do you use it best?
Well, I'll take a step back. I do call subject to acquisition a wrap because generally it is. I draft up a new set of loan documents for that acquisition, and I call them all wraps. So if the question is what's a wrap and when do you use it best, I'm going to find my purchases via some type of distressed, or maybe we'll call it confused seller. They're either in foreclosure or mom and dad passed away. Now they got this property and they don't know what the heck to do with it. That's always a good wrap situation. And I'm trying to think of a third. There's a third that I forget about. Absent homeowner. Property's been sitting there for a long time. I get calls all the time. Hey, I've got a property. I don't think it's been. I think it's been vacant for about 2 years. What do I do? And that's easy. You find the heir and say, "Hey, good news. I'm going to take this over and pay you some money."
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And many times, if that heir is out of state
Oh
or
yeah,
located somewhere else, you're actually solving a problem for them.
yeah. And vacant landlord owned properties too, especially out of state. Clearly, they're not managing it. It's a headache. It's a drag on their money. You can come in. You're a solution. So there's 4 ways, Maida, how it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to, and so Midas, thanking you for that question, Alan. So thank you. So let's go back to our origination here of our thought here. And let me find my question again here. So we were talking about a perfect storm. Um, how do you see the lender qualifications to a possible buyer creating that perfect storm? Because it's just not working as fast as some buyers would like it to be, or getting credit for them to purchase.
Yeah. So 07, 08, 09, the qualifications were the most strict they ever have been. No one was getting a mortgage. I actually went on my own with my title effort in February of 2007, and everything was great. Numbers were hitting where they're supposed to hit. And then come October '07, I always say we were sitting crisscross applesauce playing tiddlywinks because there was no closings. Zero
Mm,
were occurring.
wow.
And so then very, very quickly, people realized, okay, time for seller finance transactions,
Yeah.
time for wraps.
Yeah.
We don't have that. We don't have that intensity that we had back then. But we've got folks who are getting a little bit nauseous when they see the interest rate,
Mm,
and then also whenever they see the criteria they have to comply with to qualify, they're also saying, no, I'm not going to be able to do it. And then obviously step in the mortgage wrap as a solution.
yeah, absolutely. So let's say somebody is considering to switch their investment purposes over to sub-twos and wraps. Obviously, there's substantial returns. Maybe you can line out some of those and maybe even use a case study of how this would benefit an investor or a long-term hold person that maybe has money in a Roth IRA and it's not making any money there. They could have it in a QRP. It's not making any money back. And worse, it could be in a bank making 0.0001%
Yeah.
a year.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have 2 examples that I put in the material. One's mine, and one's my wife's IRA. Mine was kind of a simple little $172,000 purchase up in Bell County. Purchased SubTo, obviously. Immediately sold it for $195. So I manufactured and made $23,000 in equity. It didn't exist.
Hmm.
It only existed because I acquired the property at the alleged fair market value, but
Yeah.
went and sold it above fair market value at 195. So that one cash flowed at 500 a month. We got that 23,000, what I call embedded equity, lasted for 7 years. I ended up with a 600% return, which is 85% per year. And my joke is ask your stockbroker if they can beat that.
Yeah.
So that's one, and that's powerful in and of itself. The one in my wife's IRA was a little bit different because we kept getting the property back. Folks would default when they bought this property, seller finance. I don't know what the heck was going on, but we ended up getting it back 3 times. And so we were spec to make about $35,000 on that transaction. Her IRA ended up making $151,000 on that. But again, that was an outlier a little bit because we got the property back. But it does go to illustrate if the worst case scenario happens where your borrower defaults, you end up making more money. I don't want my buyers to fail, but if they do, and if we work through everything and they can't go forward, it's not bad. We make more dollars.
Yeah. Yeah, because basically you're just repossessing the asset in a sense, right? You're taking that asset back. It belongs to your lender, whoever your lender is. Do you create an LLC to lend out on your wrap? How do you structure that?
I currently put all of my SubTo acquisitions and my seller finance wraps in the same LLC. Um, um, None of them have enough equity to warrant getting another LLC. Now my wife's IRA, one property has 140,000 equity in it. I don't like that because we can't separate those in the IRA, but I don't want a default on some kind of lawsuit on one property to come seep over to that equity. And
Yeah.
so once you start getting a bunch of equity in one LLC, it's time to switch to another one.
Yeah. 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 So we're not going to go into deep financial learning here, but I want to ask you this question. So let's say you have, um, let's just take $50,000 in a Roth IRA. It's already tax free in there, right? Because you already pay taxes before you put it in there. So now it's tax free. And you're going to go and buy a SubTo, and maybe it's taking you $20,000 to acquire a, let's say, $300,000 property. So you're taking $20,000 out of your Roth IRA, the for the benefit of such and such, right? You're taking that, you're buying that SubTo, then you turn around and wrap that SubTo, and you take, let's say, $40,000 down
Yep.
from your wrap buyer with maybe $300 a month on the arbitrage. So now you just made, in less than 30 days, you made 20,000, all free and clear cash, which, like you said, you created that equity.
Yeah.
And you're now collecting $300 a month, all going straight back into the Roth IRA, which is the benefit of, which is you. How much of that do you pay in taxes?
I mean, zero.
Yep.
Everything gets parked in there, and then unfortunately, it's going to be kids that get the money, but they'll be happy, or maybe it'll be us. We'll see. And then I will admit to ignorance in regard to when you pull the dollars out. Probably different taxing things that occur at that point, but those I don't know.
Yeah. And so I guess my point was, you're not really paying any taxes on any of that. It's really 15, 20 years later, 30 years later, whoever, once that lump sum of money has accumulated, you're actually creating the interest, because if it's just in a Roth IRA, it's not making a lot of money. But if you're generating it and moving it in and out, now it's creating cash flow and your own built-in interest, which if you took out 20 and you put back in 40, how much interest is that? Yeah, I mean, it's quadruple whatever. And sometimes I think that the average agent investor doesn't understand the availability of financing that may be available for you to buy the SubTos.
You know, I mean, when you said acquisition of 20,000, some people may say that's not very much. I don't believe you. You're spending anywhere between literally 3,000, or yours 750, but 3,000 on the low end, and 25, I would say, on the high end. That one example that I gave with the 172,000 acquisition, if you look at it, I paid negative $4,000 to get that structure in place, because the down payment was $4,000 more than my dollars out of pocket. So it cost me negative $4,000 to use this investment strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And what other asset class is there? I mean, if you want to buy a McDonald's franchise, just show up with $1 million and you're good to go, right? You want to create a business, make your own business. I mean, any franchise, you can't find anything under $100,000 just to buy any type of franchise, right? Where in a SubTo, you're putting $30,000, 10% down on an asset class that's $300,000. Where else can you get such amount of invested equity with very little money into it and great returns, right? It's got to be in the SubTo real estate.
Yeah, yeah. And I always say, whenever I see the wholesaler going over there and they got this property under contract, they haven't checked to see if it could be a SubTo acquisition, and they're making $5,000 on their wholesale fee. I'm like, no, acquire that property SubTo. It's going to cost you negative dollars. Or at least zero if you time everything correctly, find your end buyer, simultaneous close. But some listen, some don't.
Yeah, and part of it is really a mind shift, right? Because they want cash now, like they want the cash, and they're going to close in 7 days. I want my $5,000. All right, that's their business model. Go for it, right? But if they bring it to you or me, we'll just end up buying the thing.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And I did teach. I had a wholesaler bringing me his wholesales. I kept telling him, man, you got to take these down yourself. And I haven't seen a wholesale from him in about 3 years now.
Oh, okay. You cut yourself out of business for that guy.
I did.
Well, don't worry. There's many more wholesalers out there, so much to come. So Wraps and sub-twos, they're about to increase, or they are increasing now. Ellen, what are you seeing? Why is the market increasing these sub-twos and these wraps?
Well, there's two things. There's the folks out there who already knew about them, and they're poised and ready, and they're taking advantage of the change in the market, changing this, changing the other. And so they've been poised and ready for this, and they know. But there's also a really big contingent of real estate agents and owners of investment property who are looking for that arbitrage that you're talking about. I'm getting phone calls that say, I've got this property at 2.95, 3.15% interest. Is there anything I can do to take advantage of that? And then we just, teach them and tell them about it. And I'm surprised, it's actually pretty savvy of a lot of people to say, hey, how do I take advantage of this? The answer is easy, but it's surprising they kind of come on it themselves. And so everyone is interested in that. And, I'm trying to teach every real estate agent that I know when you come in and you're looking at a property and, hey, it's a short sale. Well, it's also a sub-2, and you just got to be ready. So hopefully education is helping an increase in the wraps and sub-2s, but you got investors poised and ready and people learning.
Yeah. And we're getting questions from different channels here. And let me see if I can post this one here that popped up. And they were asking, I don't see it yet, but they were asking, why would I want to use a sub-2 instead of a loan?
Well, the answer to that's a lot right now, because your loan is going to cost a whole bunch more than what you're acquiring. Most loans out there that you're acquiring sub-2 are going to be down in the 3.5, 4 maybe, is A. But B, you're limited on the number of loans you can get. And I forget the number, darn it, either 7 or 10 is the most loans you can have. And so with the sub-2 acquisition, you can literally be in control of hundreds of mortgages at any given time. And there's a lot of investors that have that. They have literally 200, 300, 400 units that are sub-2s. So I was going to say skirting the system. They're legally increasing the amount of mortgages they can get above the legal amount. So those two reasons are reason. And you're also, I almost don't want to say it this way, but let's say the market goes to complete heck, everything drops. If I have 5 mortgages out there, I'm going to be defaulting on 5 mortgages. If I have 100 sub-2s out there, I'm defaulting in regard to my seller to me, but it's not hitting my credit. So in a DEFCON 1 situation, I always say I'm not going to get as hurt because I'm still using OPM and OPC, other people's money and other people's credit.
Yep. And at the end of the day, that's where the benefit is as an investor. There's a little bit of anonymity on you, as well as not having to use your credit to purchase a property.
Yeah. And I'm laughing a little bit now because I just now realized the letter I got about that 2014 transaction, the investor that was in the middle, he wasn't involved at all. They're talking about now the investor stepped in and he's honorable and he's the one that's controlling things, but he's not the alleged, bad guy, the bad guy they're going after. So you're 100% correct.
Yeah. So when you buy them, then Ellen, you're using an LLC. You're not so much structuring it with anonymity on it because then anybody can find the LLC, or is there a vehicle? Because I'll give you my input of how I do it, but I want to see how you're doing these.
So I'm using the same LLC for the acquisition and the sale. That has a bit of anonymity involved in it because, like that fellow who sent me the letter, he kind of doesn't know what went on, and so he knows that his client came in and said, "Hey, this is all wrong," and then he looks at the county records and he knows who the owner is. He doesn't really know what all went on, and he's I think 1.5 year lawyer, and so you've got 40-year lawyers that don't understand this stuff, much less 1.5 year lawyers.
Yep.
So it's not actual anonymity. It's I guess what would be technical or functional anonymity that's going on there. And I'm not big on making sure no one can find me necessarily, and the reason is I did a bunch of collection work, and I find everyone.
Yeah.
It just may be a touch more difficult, but I will find everyone.
So the Garn Saint Germain Act,
Uh-oh.
how does and I know you're may not be pro towards it, but it was designed for state planning, right?
Yep.
But could it also be used for anonymity because a land trust is a non-recordable instrument?
So you're forcing me to have to say yes. Um, and the reason I say that is the act allows me to take my homestead or what have you, and deed it over into a family limited partnership or a family trust or what have you.
Yeah,
And they said no, that doesn't violate the due on sale clause. Period.
right.
But you can utilize that structure. So I'm buying a property from Bob Smith, and I create the Bob Smith Family Trust. I
Hmm.
put the house over in there, and Bob Smith is maybe the beneficiary at first, but that beneficiary interest gets transferred over to me, and that's not a recorded document.
Right.
So when the mortgage company looks at Bob Smith Family Trust, they're like, oh, estate planning, and they move on to the next. It's a little bit more complicated. Title offices start getting kind of fussy with these trusts that aren't actually trusts. Um, um, the reason I say you're forcing me to say yes, they work, is because the due on sale clause is such a non-issue in this world. To have something that's, let's say, 5% more complicated, but comes up in 0.00005 of the times, and that's a literal number of how many times we've seen a problem in the files we've closed. You've got 5% times we've closed over 7,000. That's a lot. So it's a little more cost, a little more complexity, but again, yes, you are correct. It would help with the anonymous nature of the transaction. Darn it.
And not to have to pull words out of your mouth, Alan, but I don't do it so much for the due on sale as much as just anonymity.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
I mean, if they look up, let's just say 123, or let's just say Bob Smith, right? Bob Smith LLC or Stone Oak LLC, whatever you want to call it, and you go up there and there's 100 Stone Oaks LLCs, that's a prime target for many things.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Yeah,
And again, back when I was doing collection work, it's the first search we do. We
yeah,
search their name in the county and contiguous counties and see what they got.
yeah, yeah. Because that's lawsuits ready to go, right? Because look at all these properties are available.
And so the owner of that property is Bob Smith Family Trust,
Yep,
and there's no way to find out who the beneficiary is of that until litigation starts. Once
right.
litigation starts, we can ask questions, but there's no search that's going to find, okay, Alan Ceshker is actually the beneficiary of the Bob Smith Family Trust.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
and the beneficiary could be another trust, whose
Yeah.
beneficiary could be another trust, and whose beneficiary could be another trust. So now it's just a cat and mouse game that may take a long time to find.
So I invest. I usually only carry anywhere between 5, 15 properties, or I should say 5 and 15 notes. I'm in control of 5 to 15 properties. I don't really need to be anonymous. If this is your business and you're acquiring dozens per year, then yeah, you want to look to that. You do want to keep yourself a step or two away from probing attorneys.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. Let me just ask another question, and I'm just typing them over from because somehow my stream
Yep.
isn't moving over the questions. Uh, so the answer, actually, I might have mistyped it. How can I buy foreclosures with SubTo? Is the question. How?
So I'll get back to. Oh no, this is a different. I've got an issue with a insurance claim, a title insurance claim, and what you're doing is you're going to distress seller and saying, hey, I can save the day for you. Your property didn't sell out there by listing it. You're not getting fair market value. I can start paying your mortgage and therefore fixing your credit and take this foreclosure off of your plate. So taking away a bunch of emotional stress that you have. And I'm going to start paying your mortgage. In the insurance claim, the other attorneys over there arguing, well, he would have had to pay off that mortgage when he acquired the property. Like,
Mm.
why? He'll just take it sub-2. And even that title insurance attorney didn't understand fully. But what you're doing is, and I'm not tongue in cheek saying this or being flippant. You are helping those people who are in a distressed situation. So
Yep.
you get those foreclosure lists, you get that pre-foreclosure list, you get that 90-day late list, and you go and tell these people, I actually have a solution for you, and let them know their credit's going to start getting fixed immediately. This foreclosure looming over them is going to get fixed immediately. It's a benefit. It's a benefit. You should see some of the testimony that was going on down there at the legislature. The investors bringing in the people who had sold their property sub-2. They said they were lifesavers. They were heroes.
Yeah.
So it's not a marketing or a sales scheme that I'm talking about. It's actuality. So you're coming in and advising these people who are in foreclosure. We have a solution.
Yeah. 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 And how do you think the legislature looks at that along with, and this may be a deeper question and answer as much or as little as you want, because a standard real estate transaction takes about 20 people get paid on a standard real estate transaction, right? You got title people, you got commissions on both sides, you got the seller, you got maybe a buyer's getting a concession right there, you got an inspector, surveyor. I mean, there's a lot of people getting paid. On a sub-2, not a whole lot.
Not a whole bunch.
Yeah, yeah.
Our sub-2 settlement statements, we use those for the assistants to cut their teeth on when they're getting ready to be an escrow officer. Much
Mm.
simpler transaction. And the legislature, they did pretty darn good getting their arms around what a sub-2 or a mortgage wrap is. When we got rid of the big bank lobbyists and their smoke screens and lies, they figured it out and came with some good legislation. But it's I'm trying to think. I'll have to admit it's a tiny bit riskier than a conventional transaction, just because there's more moving parts, and there is a chance of the due on sale clause being called note being called due. So that there's a tiny bit more risk, but if managed correctly, then there's almost the same risk.
Hmm. So, do you think in coming into the summer and fall, are we going to start seeing more foreclosures that are going to increase a sub-2 opportunities and wraps?
My answer is yes. More and more people are going to get in trouble because of the ending of the forbearances. I was just on the phone with someone. We're thinking about partnering up on a 9-month fix and flip, and he said it's his opinion the market's going to tank. I'm not going to give my opinion because if you want to know what the market's going to do, ask me and then go the other way, because I'm usually 100% right. But wraps and sub-2s are going to increase. If interest rates don't come down, people don't want to get a mortgage. So seller finance is the only solution. When people can't sell their house on the open market because of value decreases, there's going to be more seller finances. So yes is my answer to that unequivocally. As to what the market's going to do, I don't know, but wraps and sub-2s are going to increase.
Yeah. And sub-2s are really not new, because in the 80s, you could just
Oh, yeah.
literally assume any possible loan. If you can fog up a window or a mirror, you could, assume that loan.
Yeah.
And even, what is it, FHA loans are assumable, right?
There's some still. In 1990, FHA came out and said you can't assume our loans anymore.
Uh-huh.
And so that's why title insurance companies aren't insuring FHA and VA wraps. It's because in 1990 they said we're gonna blacklist you if you do this. And I'll tell you, it's occurred exactly one time over the course of the last 33 years that they blacklisted someone. And it was back in 1990.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Huh. Okay. So then what you're saying is, in your title company or other title companies, if you're buying a property sub-2, you can put title insurance in that sub-2.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Okay. All right. So
What
even though, okay, go ahead.
well the I usually don't get title insurance on my SubTos, but it's a risk benefit analysis. If there's a deceased party in title, a
Yeah.
bunch of liens against the seller, or other types of irregularities, then yeah, let's get that thing insured. But if it's a spotless, clean title commitment where all we have is a deed of trust from Wells Fargo, then I'm not getting title insurance on that. Now I can take a little bit more risk. If there's an issue, I can fix it because I don't have to pay an attorney. I've agreed to represent me for free, so that's good. But yeah, absolutely, you can insure those now. FHA and VA. Title company can't close those because they can't insure them. So you are at an attorney-owned title office, fee office for those. But no, absolutely, I would say well more than half are insured on the SubTo side, and then probably 75% on the seller finance wrap side.
Actually on the sale. So the wrap, you can actually. So in a sense, you're doing two title insurers, right? One for you to acquire, one for you to sell with the wrap.
Yeah. Now, if I end up getting title insurance on the acquisition side, I'm going to argue a long time that, hey, I've owned this thing for 20 days. We don't need another title insurance policy.
Right.
And it may be getting too technical, but whenever I sell or finance a house, if I have title insurance, my buyer policy stays in place. So that new policy is actually only providing insurance for that 20 days.
Right.
So it's somewhat useless in my opinion. So really, you only need it on one side. And I always look left and right. Left is my acquisition, and right's my disposition.
That's what I do.
Okay, good. I'm
same thing.
So if you're getting title insurance on one side, you're good.
Yeah. But it doesn't carry over necessarily to the wrap buyer.
Nope.
It's just proof to them that, hey, all's good.
Yeah. So if I literally own that thing, and usually I keep mine for about a month maximum, hopefully. We've already been looking for the buyer well before close.
Sure.
If I sell that to them, seller finance, and there ends up being a title issue, they can sue me, and then my policy comes in place.
Yeah, right. Even though you've already wrapped the property.
Yep.
Right, because that's the reason you're getting it. If anything that pops up after the fact.
Yeah, the average attorney, or even the average title attorney, isn't going to know that my buyer policy stays in place if I sell or finance that house, and a wrap is seller finance.
Right, exactly. So there is no stipulation that it becomes null and void on a wrap or on a sale.
Correct.
Got it. Yeah, well,
Yep.
that's perfect. That's perfect clarity. I learned something. Oh, that's excellent. So let's go over to another question here that we have here, or some of the topics that you mentioned. SubTo is not the only acquisition method you mentioned in one of your trainings.
Yeah. So everyone needs to understand that if you can defer your dollars down, obviously that's good. And so if you're looking at an acquisition as only a SubTo and you have to bring all that equity down, you're not doing what you should be doing. What you should be doing is negotiating minimum dollars down. And then if that doesn't, if it's above, if the remaining is above what's owed on the mortgage, you're just acquiring by wrap now. And a lot of people will do what's called a hybrid, and I don't like them, where, okay, so there's 50,000 equity above what's owed. I'm going to get a SubTo acquisition and another seller finance note carried back. You don't need to do it that way. If 200,000 is owed to the mortgage and you're buying it for 250, you're just doing a seller finance wrap now for 250. But yeah, you got to use the wrap as an acquisition, possibly if there's too much equity owed to that seller.
Well, I have an investor that likes to buy SubTos, but a couple things. Number one, make sure he gets title insurance, and then number two, he splits up the deal. So let's say, he's taking it over at 200,000. Let me just throw out that number, but he's selling it for 250. And so his total purchase is 200, and he needs to acquire that at 70% of the ARV, or what the highest value of that property is. So let's say the highest value is maybe 260, 270, somewhere around there. I don't know. I'm just throwing out a number. And he acquires it at 200. The reason he does that is because he's going to get two notes, right? The 200,000 straight to the bank or the seller, and then his income, the 50,000, and he does that with title policy so that he can then sell the first note to a note buyer.
Yep. Yep. I should have put an asterisk behind what I was saying because you caught me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That is one of the reasons to definitely have the notes split up. If you want to sell off that note for 85 cents on the dollar, 90 cents on the dollar sometimes, then you can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really becomes, so let's say even if it's a backup method for you, um, you don't have to use it, but you have it in case you need it.
Yep. Yeah.
Another reason is, so let's say you are holding that and you still have two notes, and for some reason it gets the note called due, and you want to use your income to buy it out or get a private investor to buy out that $200,000 note, then you get rid of the bank. Another
Yeah.
possibility.
Yep.
Do you agree with that?
Yep, absolutely, absolutely, and we've had that exact situation occur. Bank did call the note due. Now the amount was 70,000, so they ended up paying that off.
Yeah.
But it did allow for that splitting of the notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a good investor friend that does exactly what we're talking about. And we've been doing it probably about the same time. Maybe he's a little bit longer. And what he does is he acquires a SubTo, wraps it, let it go for a little bit, build equity, and then as it's buying down the lender note, he'll take a Roth IRA of 5 different investors and then cash it out, or a whole life policy, cash them out, and now they're paying back into the policy that
Yeah.
interest that they would pay the bank.
Yep, that's good. That's good. I haven't seen that, but I like that.
Yeah. And I imagine that's another strategy of buying those SubTos as well.
Yeah. Now you're causing me to think here for a little bit.
Yeah.
I can actually set. Well, I don't know if I can. Before I got married, I could sell my wraps over to my wife's IRA, but might not be able to now. But that's a good way to start building your IRA.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously that would be a non-qualifying, right? Because you can't sell that within your own family when it comes to the Roth IRA. There's stipulations.
I told my wife not to take my last name so we could keep doing it.
Okay, we'll erase that. We'll edit that from the video.
That was a joke.
You don't want her to hear that, okay? Now, the other thing you can use is an EQRP or a QRP, a qualified retirement plan.
Yeah. Now we're getting way outside my expertise now.
All right, let's not talk about that. That'll be a discussion at another time. Here we go. Richard Knowles is asking, can you have a balloon on a wrap to an owner occupant? I've heard some say you can't due to Dodd-Frank.
So gold star to Richard. If you're doing 3 or less in a 12-month period, you can have a balloon. You still have to go through an ability to repay process under Dodd-Frank, but you can still have that non-full amortizing loan. After the third one, you're going to need to comply with certain standards to be able to have that balloon, and you're not going to be able to comply with those standards. And so, strictly speaking, you can't. Now, I will tell you, back in 2015, when Dodd-Frank started, I think maybe 14, yep. We were running around like crazy with hair on fire, trying to figure this out and complying and such. And then over the years, everyone realized there's no Dodd-Frank police. Only time an issue is going to come up is if maybe you're foreclosing against them. They go and get an attorney. Attorney knows what's going on, looks back at the compliance, which they're not going to. So most of the investors are, I don't want to say it this way, but I have to say it, ignoring Dodd-Frank. It's not a substantive risk out there. Same as the SAFE Act, the Federal SAFE Act or the Texas SAFE Act. People are kind of ignoring that. And the reason is there's no teeth on it. Now, the new legislation that came out, there's a substantial teeth on that. And so one of the main requirements is that you utilize an RMLO after your third transaction in a 12-month rolling period. They actually say you have to be one. Right now we're using them. But I'm not worried about Dodd-Frank. I am worried about complying with the Senate Bill 43 new legislation.
Yeah, which is using that RMLO after the third.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the correct disclosures.
And the correct disclosure, that's right. And Texas has plenty of disclosures that need to be used. And a self-made investor, if he doesn't understand this process, can get himself in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, yeah. Real quick, if you have a defaulting buyer and you haven't provided the correct disclosures at time of acquisition, um, you're gonna be in a problem because there's right of rescission. You have to give all the money back that he's paid over the 3, 4, 5 years, what have you.
Yeah, and they're required. You're required to give them all that money back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Principal, interest, taxes, insurance,
yeah,
down payment dollars,
yeah.
earnest money, everything.
Everything. Yeah, those disclosures are so important. You can't get around those. So those are very important for us to have. Now, going back to the Dodd Frank, then Alan. So even if you use an RMLO, you would still not be qualified on the fourth if you're wanting to use a balloon.
Under Dodd Frank, no,
Yeah,
no.
and
There's qualified mortgages and non-qualified and high cost mortgages, and you would have to comply with the specific item that allows for that balloon, and you're not going to be able to make it.
if you put three on one LLC, three on another LLC, you still, if you're the owner, you can't get around it that way either.
So
Question.
it is what we were doing with Dodd Frank. We didn't know if it'd work or not. The new Senate Bill 53 legislation came out, and they specifically drafted and said you cannot do the one LLC and then the next LLC. They even went further, and I think wrongfully, and said a married couple can only do three, which I think is a little bit disrespectful in regard to. I've got several clients where the wife does one thing, the husband's doing another thing, and so I thought it was almost like it was archaic and rude to women's or men's rights, whichever one doesn't get to do the fourth one because their spouse did three.
That's right. That's right. And I imagine the lobbyists for this, for these bills, are lenders, right? Because obviously they're not making money.
They were our enemy.
Yeah.
So, and many investors came from San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, and went. And we were all there. And so it was us against these fat cat, big bank lobbyists.
You can't, I mean, how are you going to win? They run the world, right? How can you win against a bank? Doesn't work. Vince Reyes says, what is the best way to structure a SubTo deal with a seller who has a lot of equity?
So that's that, I don't want to call it a hybrid, but if there's too much equity, you got to roll your sleeves up and start negotiating. Hey, well, especially on the equity partnering, if they've got a ton of equity in there, but they don't have the money to go and repair this thing and make ready, you go and say, listen, you can get $500,000 for it as it is right now. You only owe $300,000 on your mortgage, but we're gonna dump $100,000 into this thing and go sell it for $900,000. Let's share that instead of you just making your $200 now. You're going to structure that as a wrap purchase versus a SubTo purchase. And I'm going to actually, Vince, I'm going to use your language next class, next Saturday. A SubTo with too much equity is a wrap, not a hybrid, but a wrap.
Yep, exactly. And now, Alan, what about buying it as a novation? With a novation?
So you can certainly use the novation structure to get under contract with a SubTo and get over there, sell it. Well, actually, you're acquiring SubTo. You could sell it as a SubTo, sell it as a wrap, sell it as anything, and then take your dollars above your contract price. So you can use novation structure in a SubTo acquisition.
Yeah. And we will go into it a whole lot. But Vince, thanks for that question as well. And we're coming up at the top of the hour. And I know, Alan, you've got plenty of meetings to go to, but I want to thank you for your time. We're trying to make these as a series. There's other and more information that's going to come this way. Alan, I know you have Rap University coming up this Saturday in Austin, Texas. Just shout out for everybody so they know in case anybody wants to come and visit you. Yeah.
So you can email us at assistant@ceshkergroup.com and ask for information on the May 20 Rap University. We do have the online course now that's available in 3 different levels. So you can use that assistant@ceshkergroup.com to email out about that. But my goal is to teach everyone to have this, like I said, in their toolbox. So when it comes up, you know how to do it. You don't necessarily have to go out there and even try to invest in this way at all. You just know that it's ready whenever you see it come up in front of you. Deceased party and title, foreclosure situation, what have you.
Absolutely. Alan, thanks so much for this call. Thank you all for attending. We want to continue to connect with you every weekly.